What's up, y'all? My name is Kevin Wright. I am a volunteer on staff with crew at George Mason University, among other things, but we'll start there. Here we go.
So, Kevin, how did you get involved in your work at George Mason?
Okay, this is actually a really interesting story because the average person who does my kind of work, it did not happen for them the way I'm about to tell you. Close to 8 years ago, I was involved with a passion play at the church I attend in Woodbridge. And I met my friend Chad Spears, who at the time was a student at George Mason. During that time of the play I was working on, you basically lived there. Because I mean, there was a lot of rehearsal, I had lines to memorize, I had a pretty significant part of it. I was there a lot and he was helping with behind the scenes stuff, so we had a lot of time to hang out on the set. So after the play was done, I gave him a call and said, well, now that we don't have this play in front of us right now, are you up for hanging out? Is there anything you want to do? He says, well, there's this quote unquote ministry night happening at my school, George Mason. You should come up and you should check it out. And I found out that it was crew, and I actually had prior history with crew at George Mason. So when I got there, I was like, this is cool. I'm glad to be here. But it's been a few years since I've been around, so I'm not gonna walk in here and act like I know everybody, because I don't really know anyone at this point. So as we were there hanging out with students and talking with people, I got to know different people who were on staff and then different students, and we decided after that night was over, we were gonna continue coming. And there was only 4 weeks left in the semester at that point. So we kept coming over those 4 weeks. I continued, and now close to 8 years later, here we are.
Wow, that's awesome. Very cool. So I know you mentioned you were involved in crew before that. Being a part of that ministry and just religion in general, had that been a big thing in your life before that, or did you kind of get more into it once you started at George Mason?
Jesus has been a huge part of my life since I was 6. I mean, my parents grew up, had a foundation in Jesus. So me and my younger sister, we always had a foundation of who Jesus was, what he was about. The church we attended growing up, it was a small, intimate church, so we were like family. I got really real with Jesus at 6, and then I continued to grow with him as time went along. But yes, so he's always been a part. And actually, it's funny that you do say that, because as I mentioned, I was a part of a church play when I met my friend in 2010 that we ended up going. And one of the things that pushed me to keep going was the fact I said, well, I see people who call themselves Christians who actually wear the name of Jesus, family, period, because of that's how just Jesus, that's what he taught us, and that's how he lived his life out on the earth. So part of my motivation to continue was like, this is new family I'm getting to know.
You said you were close to Jesus ever since you were 6.
Yes.
Was there something that happened around that time that kind of led you to that, or what influenced you at that point?
And there was this team that came through called the Power Team, and they would do really wild stuff. They would rip phone books and everything.
Oh, wow.
They would break stuff. But in addition to doing all that wild, intense stuff I just mentioned, they would share their stories and share their testimony and share the gospel. And then that's when the Holy Spirit turned the light on. That's wait, okay, there's this Jesus. They're saying one thing, but it looks like I don't know who he is. So you know we need to meet. So Jesus, here I am.
Got the sweatshirt.
Yeah, exactly. Like, here you are, here I am. Like, here's my life, you can have it. And that was the starting point.
What advice would you give to your past self?
Don't be so wrapped up in what other people are thinking that you get distracted from what it is you know you're supposed to be doing and where you're supposed to be headed. I mean, people are gonna talk regardless. So
Very true.
As long as you know where you're at and what you're doing, and you're staying consistent and you're staying true, don't allow the detriments of other people to push you to some crazy direction just because.
If you could invite any one person as a dinner guest, whether it be someone who's dead or alive, who would it be?
As of late, I've been really digging into a lot of stuff that Martin Luther King has talked about, given that last Monday was his birthday celebration, just to really be able to see his life now. Thing of it is, during the time of his actual life, he was hated. He didn't have this entourage of people all cheering him on while he was standing up for what was right, and even challenging the church at many times, like, y'all need to stop being hypocrites. even when you look at what's happening now, when you have athletes taking a knee and other things, and the same answers that they're being given was some of the same stuff he was dealt with almost line upon line. Like one example I would give was, I don't know if you've ever read it, but letters from a Birmingham jail. Part of that letter was written in response to white clergy at the time that basically said your methods are intense, they're not wise, and you really don't need to be doing what you're doing. You just need to wait. So I would definitely want to dig into more of like, what was it like?
Right.
And what were some of the harder things that had to have come along with being so steadfast in the way he was?
So along the lines of that, what do you think Martin Luther King would think about what's going on today?
I can say, obviously, there has definitely been significant progress, but we're not where we're supposed to be. One thing I know he would definitely have the call on the carpet, because in that same letter, how he was disappointed with the white moderate at that time, he was disappointed with clergy not being in arms and being able to catch the vision of what was happening. So I think he would definitely be like, look, obviously, just as he was throughout his life, he wasn't in favor of violence. He wasn't in favor of discrimination, period. So he wouldn't have stood for any of that now, but I think he would still be like, these areas where things are off track, which we do have a couple. So like dealing with some of the things that have happened, especially in the area of police brutality, which was one of the main components of what he was up against.
Right.
Like, it was the government, it was the police force, those were the main areas who helped to execute the move against him doing what he was doing. So I believe he definitely would have a lot to say about that.
Oh yeah, definitely. It'd be nice to kind of have if we could have his guidance today too. How has racism or segregation still today in this country affected you and your life growing up, or maybe with the church as well?
I'm very fortunate to say that because I grew up in Northern Virginia, it actually helped to really shape my heart for all people groups, because literally all people groups live here. Alongside of my volunteer work with Crew, I have a current job at Walmart in Woodbridge where I live. Literally everybody in the entire world is represented there. I've definitely been given a heart for all people groups because I live in an area where all people groups are fairly represented. And I mean, it has affected me in the ways, like I said, because when you see incidents like what happened with Sandra Bland being arrested unfairly, for matter of fact, telling the officer that she was going to get her lawyer, because that's what you're supposed to do, by what she was doing, or to see Eric Garner, who was choked to death with an illegal move that had been illegal for 21 plus years, and he wasn't fighting, he wasn't resisting. Those things are definitely frustrating to have to be like, wait, this kind of stuff is still happening. I'm an individual, anybody who knows me well knows I can laugh, I can joke, I can have fun, but one thing I'm not about deprecating humor. I'm not about stuff that has to come at somebody's expense, because it's not right. And when we talk about racial tension, that's definitely an area where it's like, wait a minute, I know you thought that was funny, but it isn't. I know you thought that was okay, but it's really not. And then also the fact that we still have people who are ignorant to not be willing to hear people's stories and get upset like, wait, you're making a big deal out of something that's really not here. Well, not quite. You've just never seen it. Just because you've never seen it and just because you've never come across it, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
What advice or words of wisdom would you like to pass along to anybody out there who's struggling, or advice you could give to kind of have them live their best life?
I mean, if you really want to live your best life, you're going to have to put Jesus first. And outside of that, I would say get around the individuals who actually can encourage you and actually can pour into you and invest in you. You're not meant to live life by yourself. All of us have to have moments where it's time to go, regroup, rethink, do some things, but we're not called to live a life in isolation. So I would definitely be like, you need to get around some solid people. And they don't need to be a ton of people either. I'm not saying get get quality over quantity. Get a few folks who can understand, and people who gonna tell you the truth. Not people who gonna sugarcoat and fabricate and be like it's okay when it's not. Like when you know you acting up, you need those people that's gonna tell you, wait man, you know what you're doing right now. That's really not okay. Like, I'm not saying I'm done with you. I'm not saying I'm not gonna have anything with you, but you know what you, no, hold up, come over here. Let's talk about that thing right there and let's see how we can get that right.
Yeah.
So those are two major components I would pass to anybody. All right. One last thing I would definitely say is, and which is why I'm a huge proponent of stuff like we're sitting down with, don't settle for making money. Money is important. We need to be able to live life. I understand that this drink we're drinking wasn't free. It did cost somebody money. Houses and other things, living space. I understand there's a cost that comes to living that comes along with life. But if your main goal in life is simply worried about getting a paycheck and you get on a job that you're miserable at just because it gets you this huge paycheck,
right.
We've been fed that lie for a very long time that you need to have a job, you need to have a check, you need to have all these things lined up for you. And once again, I'm not advocating irresponsibility. I'm not advocating negating what you know you need to be taken care of, but I am saying there's a way for you to do what it is you have a genuine passion to do in a way that's going to really help other people. Don't hold back on that just because of the simple fact that you may not have everything in front of you right away.
Right. I think that's awesome advice. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for sitting down and sharing with me today.
No problem.
It was really nice getting to know you, Kevin.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me. Cheers. Here we go.